Good evening. Thank you all for being here. I believe this is the second last panel of the day of the festival and as a whole. Welcome to the Traveler's Map-mory. I'm your moderator for today. My name is Jonathan. I have Dipika on my left. Well, Marco is also on my left. So let's kick things off. I hope you all are doing well today. Let's kick things off with a bit of intention setting. I'll just read the introduction to this panel so we kind of know what we're getting into. So the traveler's memory. Our journeys are more than just physical displacements. They're emotional mosaics. Each tile a memory painted with vibrant colors of nostalgia, wonder, and loss. From nostalgic daydreams to bittersweet reflections, memory paints the canvas of our travel narratives, adding depth, emotion, and a personal touch. So, yeah, together let's navigate the winding paths of memory and discover how it shapes the stories we share. So, I have with me two writers who
What if I told you that I had no memories of what happened for the past 3 days?
then it'll just be a chat.
This really is setting the tone.
So I have with me two writers who I admire, and thank you for being here. And they are prolific conjurer of words, storytellers, witnesses, travelers, and that's largely what this conversation is about. So today we celebrate their work, their journey thus far, and the festival as well for creating the space to celebrate their literature. And by virtue of this conversation, it's a pause that we all get to enjoy as we dive into Dipika and Marco's works. So we'll be diving deeper in this conversation. We'll be diving deeper into the inner workings, the behind the scenes of being in transit, traveling, right? The emotional and the personal specifically. So we will waltz across themes of nostalgia, wonder, loss, and meanderings where we can in between, if time allows. So we will end the session with a short Q&A, but let's kick it off with something simple, putting you both on the spot. What's your sweetest memory of the festival so far?
You go first, Marco.
Well, I've been kind of absent this year because of work commitments. I have a book deadline next week, so sorry about that. But I don't know. I mean, the biggest memory of this festival maybe was yeah, meeting some friends I haven't seen for a long time at the dinner specifically was a convivial time, and I mean, but I do not have follow much of the session. Sorry. So yeah, I mean, I'm honest guy. So
Great.
Yeah. I'd like to echo what Marco said. I think I've been coming to GTLF for, oh, this must be my sixth time, if not the seventh. I think I just keep coming back like a bad penny, although I live in Chicago. So I think I do enjoy meeting everybody. It's such a wonderful, warm community. But I think this time I went for the walk. Did anyone else in this group yesterday in the morning, the Bon Bon Key? Is that, yeah? Oh, you did. Yes. I thought that was marvelous because it really took us through these old signs in Carnarvon Street. And, you can sort of see like how literally the words are disappearing and how we are losing such a part of the heritage. So that was so wonderful for me to sort of see. And I'm so glad that the GTLF made it a part. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. Okay, let's dive into it. We have broken this conversation down into a few parts. Hopefully, time allows again. But we'll just start things off with navigating emotions in writing. Yeah. Wonder, nostalgia, longing, and sorrow. It's a spectrum of emotions, right? And there's so much to draw from them, and yet the act of writing sometimes it requires, I think, distance to shape these feelings into like a coherent narrative. So let's start off with you, Deepika. Like, how much emotion do you allow to surface in your writings, and do you ever find yourself intentionally detaching, or do you see emotion as an essential element in crafting a story or a narrative?
I think that's a really interesting question. And I think you can't really write as a completely detached person. I think that's just not possible because then AI would be doing most of our writing very well. But I think there has to be a certain human connection. And very often women are also considered more emotional. I'm not saying that that's why you're asking me this question, but I think that there has always been a lot of emotion in travel writing, especially. And if we look at the history of travel writing, a lot of it was by either people who wanted to take over lands as colonial masters or as missionaries. So, again, there was a lot of prejudice. There was a lot of, very strong emotional context there in terms of looking down on a people. So I think that in terms of my writing, in this book, what I was trying to do is to get away from that sense of travel writing as being othering of people, of making some other community so different from you that it's exotic or it's some way bizarre. So I have written about traveling and living in places for 3 years at a time, sometimes 5 years at a time, and I've had a very nomadic life, so I've been able to do it. So there is, yes, a lot of emotions in my writing, but I still do a lot of just, simple travel stories. And in that case, in order to not forget how I felt emotionally, I will take notes. I was recently in Istanbul, and when I got back into the hotel that night, I just sat down and I wrote about how coming back to Istanbul after many years had made me feel. And so, yeah, that's how I deal with putting emotions.
Thank you, Marco.
Okay, I think it really depends what you write because, as Dipika said, travel writing historically is a very wide genre. So it's like, for me, it's also difficult because I live here, I'm white, and every time I open my mouth, someone is all the time, oh, he's white, he cannot say anything, blah, blah, blah. So I believe that these days, the best thing that you can do as a travel writer or journalist, because my work, I don't write books anymore. I mean, literary books. I write guidebooks mostly because it gets me on the road and it gets me paid very well. So yeah, whatever. Anyways, you need to detach yourself. Okay, a trip is 100% emotions because you meet people, you get into a new situation, you arrive into foreign or non-foreign lands because it is always very nice to go back to one place many times. Example, Sarawak. I just came back from Sarawak. I've probably been to 15 times. I mean, every time I do something different and you discover something deeper, you go deeper and deeper and deeper. It's like knowing a friend. There's a friend in Latin America and a friend in Sarawak. You go down into layers. But in order to write com, com, compulsive, gripping travel literature, you have to be good enough and be emotional enough to stand out of the writing and let the people that you talk about be the protagonist. So your emotions can be deceiving because, as Deepika said, many white guys order the people that they wrote about. But then there's also a trend in travel writing these days that everyone says that there has to be this uh, equality and decolonization, but everyone writing is a person of color born in England, UK, US, blah, 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 blah.
Oh, no,
So
that's not true.
that is true. And I must be one of the most exotic because I'm Italian, okay? Everyone writes about my country as the fantastic, but because I'm white, I'm associated with Brits, Americans. Bah! I don't want to be like you. I'm Italian, so I must be more exotic than anyone else. Anyways, emotions depends also on the perception of what you're writing, but I decided to take myself out of the writing unless it's when the story it's fun and makes fun of my own self. Example, I can tell you a fantastic story later about the Dalai Lama, maybe if you give me 1 minute of your time. And now I'll stop this.
Can I quarrel with him?
Yes.
Okay.
Don't play the racist card now in this country.
Your white flag, white man.
Okay.
Oh, but I have to say,
I'm
that
Italian. I'm not white.
no, I love Marco, and I think he likes me enough, so we're not going to big fight. But I think one of the things that has been true of travel writing is that the people who have been the most famous in my living thing at least have also been some of the most misogynistic and misanthropist, kind of people. I'm considering V.S. Naipaul. I mean, oh my God, that man can write about travel, but what a horrible human being, honestly. He's just
For
detestable.
example, what about Colin Tabroll?
I'm sorry, who?
Colin, I don't know if I say it correctly. Colin Tabron, Thubr, the whatever, the very famous. I
I'm
eh,
sorry, I'm
eh,
ignorant.
I really don't like him. He's very, yeah.
No, I'm going to get
Race.
to Paul Theroux, who has also written
Oh yeah.
about Malaya and Malayan railways and all that. And if you even look at Paul Theroux, as late as 1996, he was writing about Albania as, thieving beggars. And he was writing about Greece as a third world, tourist place. So I think that there is a lot of emotion and a lot of kind of, I don't know, dislike that is still there in writing by, yeah, whoever's doing it. Yeah.
Let's let's reel it back to your writings this time, Dipika. And yeah, on the note of on a heavier note of emotions, you write. You told me that I mean you write quite expansively about your brother Amit, and in your latest book you have an essay dedicated to him. So if you could read a passage for us,
Yeah.
thank you.
Just a very few lines of context. My brother Amit was an avid cyclist, and he had an accident on the streets on the Kanpur highway in India about 8 years ago. And he was vegetative for about 8 years. This year in January, he passed away. But for 8 years, I was traveling every year to go back home during a festival around Deepavali that's called Pai Phota, and for us, it's like Bhai Dooj, for those of you who know the Indian traditions. It's to basically pray for the well being of your sibling. So I would go back every year, even in the COVID years, because this was, happening for 8 years. And so I'm just going to read the last part of that. And it's not some of this book, I think there are at least two essays in there that is about going back to be with my family despite everything else that's going around in the world. This is on page 20 if anybody has the book. Every year since Amit's accident in 2016, I have been going back to India for Bhai Phota. Those of us living in one of the many tentacled diasporas of this global age, the Chinese, the Indian, the Filipino, the Nigerian, understand exactly what Mohsin Hamid meant when he wrote in Exit West. For when we migrate, we murder from our lives those we leave behind. I refuse to murder my brother from my life. So I take a COVID test 96 hours before my flight from Chicago, then quarantine in Delhi for the 2 weeks before 16 November, which is when Paifuta falls in 2020. There is always hope. My brother's accident changed so many lives, reverberating in mine much harder than that single slap that changed my academic trajectory so many years ago. Last time, when I was with my brother, reading to him, I read aloud these words by Mary Oliver. Someone I loved once gave me a box full of darkness. It took me years to understand that this too was a gift.
Thank you, thank you. Some memories will never fade, and yeah, I'm sure, like you carry him in your writings, and that's a constant for you. onto a lighter note, let's talk about the impermanence of memory. It's inherently fluid, shaped by time, emotions, the process of recalling it, even. Yeah. And each retelling can alter what we remember, sometimes in small ways and sometimes in bigger ways. And this very impermanence can also blur the line between truth and interpretation, presenting both obstacles and I guess also possibilities for the storytelling. So, Marco, how does the fading or distortion of memory affect your stories? How do you factor that, or rather, how do you factor that in to your work? Is that something that you embrace or you try to control it?
It can distort, as I was telling you about the Dalai Lama. I'll be very, very short. I didn't see the Dalai Lama, but I think I saw it. I saw him, sorry, because I was in Leon that day, and we are told that the Dalai Lama is in town, and we need to go and see the Dalai Lama. So we are all excited. Me and my wife, who's there by the way, and we have to prepare and stuff. So we wait for the time. We know we have to go to that place because he will pass on that particular street. And my photographer friend said we have to go to this cafe and stay there and photograph and stuff. But on my way to see the Dalai Lama, when sometimes you feel your stomach is not very good and you fat, sorry. But unfortunately, it was not fat. So I have to run back to the guest house and sit on that toilet and do my business. And I was in that toilet and thinking of the Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama is there, and I'm here. How many times in this world I can be on the same place with the Dalai Lama at the same time? So I saw him. I saw him in front of me. And when my friend later told me they took so many pictures of Dalai Lama from that spot, I say, I saw him too. See? So, okay, the distortion, we can distort things as much as we want, but as long as you have to take notes. You take notes, as many notes as you can, not much of the people that you meet, because people become fleeting persons. Details in a narrative, unless you're doing an interview, you need to take details of the places that you visit, the places, the names, the times, because later when you get home, that's the problem. I remember several things, many things, but not everything. So maybe that particular little town, that particular stop, it's very much important because depends how you write about travel. If you just write a story, but if you want that someone uses your narrative for maybe go back onto your steps and revisit the same place, you need to be able to give them the tools to do that, because travel writing by itself is a very it's fake, because we are writing about something that it's already happened. It's like watching the sunrise. The sunrise is fake because the sunrise is 5 or 10 seconds before the time that we are seeing it. So travel by itself is perception, is fake, and it's your responsibility to try to not distort too much the experience. So the details are very, very much important. And then I believe it's up to every writer to see a Dalai Lama on a toilet or whatever. That's a personal experience.
Like, Dipika, do you find yourself that you've met the Dalai Lama?
I've
That's
actually
the
met the Dalai.
that's the best. Us.
Thank you for saying that for me. I didn't want to come across as a complete, I'm sorry, but
As they say, shit happens, by the way. Anyway.
okay, yeah, well, shit, yeah, happens clearly. But I think my story of the Dalai Lama also was very convoluted. And the first time when I tried to see the Dalai Lama. I showed up in McLeodganj where he lives, and he was on a retreat. And I felt like an absolute idiot. Like I had no idea what I was doing in life, or I had no idea about how to plan anything. And I was clearly a fake travel writer because I couldn't even see the person I was supposed to. And then I did meet him 3 years later. But I wrote about this failure, and it turned out to be a story that is in this book as well as was republished in The Edge. I have to shout out to the Edge newspaper. Please, people, subscribe to it, buy it, because this was actually Writer's Postcards was a column in The Edge, and they asked me to write it a little more regularly than I was able to do. And then when COVID happened, nobody was publishing papers or buying them. So I put together this book. So The Edge has really, really helped me in my career. And I love that they still support writers and writing in so many ways. So, yeah, that's my Dalai Lama story.
What about distortion of memory?
Yeah. Do you find yourself?
Dalai Lama, which I think is very clear about his interest in Buddhism, whatever. But yeah,
I'm still in the zone where I'm thinking of,
yeah, sorry, there was a great story there.
yeah, the Dalai Lama on the throne, and I was like, oh, okay, I've got to get it. Yeah, the distortion of memory. Absolutely. I think just the act of any kind of writing is in itself a distortion, isn't it? I love that you said that it's fake because it's already happened. But one of the things I do when I teach creative writing, one of, writing 101, is you can't start a story and put in every detail. You can't say, I woke up at 8 o'clock, then I brushed my teeth, then I had breakfast, and then I went, blah, blah, blah. You choose what you put into the story to make it a compelling narrative. So, just by the fact of that itself, there is a lot of distortion. And even in my Dalai Lama story, I haven't put in all the stupid things that happened. I just put in what would be the most entertaining for readers.
It's true. Sorry if I cut you, but you essentially said the way of shaping a narrative. It's like watching a film. When the film starts, we don't see the character is born. I mean, you don't see me taking a plane and going to that place or whatever. I use something catchy, funny that gets you into the story. So it can be a detail that is midway through at the end of the story, or a particular approach that I had with one character, or as I said before, when you take yourself outside of the narrative, then it's about things that you see, people that you observe, things that happen around you.
Yeah, the things that stick with you, basically, is what you write about. Yeah.
Yeah. That comes at a good time.
One last thing about this. So the definition of fake is not as a stupid literary genre that you don't have to read. But example, if you read books about Laos written in the 90s, you go there now, there's the Chinese railway. I mean, Laos is a completely different country as an example. But in a way, successful stories and books, they preserve a memory of how the place looked like to some person in some time. Like going back to the Dalai Lama, we say that in Buddhism, we live 8,000 lives in every moment. I mean, so yeah, I mean, how can we see and say what type of memory is the correct one anyway?
I think that's a brilliant segue to what we're about to talk next, which is a sense of belonging in your travels, in your writing, in your work. So this travel often stirs a complex sense of belonging, or not belonging, right? Rooted in the places that we visit, the memories that we carry with us. It's a powerful force, and that draws us back as well to these places. I think you can both relate to places that you've traveled to, and I suppose it's also not just about discovering new places. I mean, as for me, I find myself gravitating to the places that I've been to. There are just a handful of countries, and I don't feel like I'm missing out. It's a coming home of sorts, right? So it's not just about discovering new places, but it's also about finding or questioning where you belong within these spaces. So could you share about a moment in your travels where you feel or you felt this deep sense of belonging, and how did that feeling or the absence of it shape the way you wrote about this place?
You want me to go? Yeah, okay. I think I feel I belong to three cities mainly. One is Kuala Lumpur, Another one is New Delhi, and the other one is Chicago. And I feel a deep sense of belonging. And I have written about these cities as well in this book. For me, the sense of belonging comes when the shopkeepers know who you are. And sometimes they know your name, they know your family, and I can go to Tamantun market, the wet market, and the shopkeepers know who I am. They'll ask whether my husband is in town already. So that gives me a sense of belonging. It has also happened in cities where I've gone back, where people sort of know you and things like that. But sometimes, honestly, I love to be in a city where I understand nothing, where the language is so unfamiliar that it's a fog of sound and everything is a discovery. So I think that, of course, sometimes you need a sense of belonging. You can't go through life without having some sense of belonging. But it's also magical to be in these situations where you really are a complete foreigner. Wouldn't you agree, Martha?
Yes, I mean, language is definitely a factor. Me and my wife hitchhike from China to Italy through the stans and Iran and stuff, Turkmenistan, using hands essentially because nobody speaks English there or Chinese. And yeah, I mean, it works out. I mean, that is one layer. But in another way, I mean, I I didn't ever really felt that I belong to my own country. Actually, I don't like my country. I'm sorry for the Italians here. I think it's such a yeah. Don't let me get into the story, but so I always been pushed out of the provincial little town where I was born, and going outside gave me emotions, experiences. I remember I used to play in punk bands. I started when I was 13 years old. By 17 and 18, I remember watching the Amsterdam skyline. I was 17 years old, and this friend came to me. This friend from the other band handed me a CD with a white line on it, and I'm like, "Oh, wow, I am in a movie." I didn't do it actually because I was scared. I was a teenager. But these things start to happen to you, so they push you out into the world. So belonging for me is what is belonging? I mean, are we considering belonging based on the very bourgeois middle class, the definition that we have to have a car, a house, and everything else? I have been going around many places, and I found a base here because I found love. Love was my grounding. But to be honest, when I walk in Penang today and going back to memory, I think, how could I ever decided to live in this place? So trafficated, so busy, so full of buildings. I mean, I'm just like very much. I don't belong anywhere, and yeah, I mean, even when you own a house somewhere, things become passé, becomes boring. I mean, the life is in constant flux. It has to be bad that keeps you on the road, otherwise you stop.
I hear you. I hear you.
Sorry,
Yeah.
but can I just say something? I think isn't like the sense of belonging and the how you feel about a country, rather like how you feel about your family. You love certain members very much. You love your children, but you don't always like them, right? I mean, and I think I have a similar sense of thing about countries as well. I mean, Trump got reelected just now, for
Yeah.
God's sake. I have to go back to
Good.
Chicago. And, I love certain things about America, but I don't always like it.
A little twist of on what we're talking about with belonging, because I remember like when we met on Friday, you were just coming off a hectic period of traveling, and I know
It has been quite hard for me, actually.
it's relentless. Kid was saying you only spent like three weeks, was it 3 months in Penang this year?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have this little apartment. I mean, we don't have handles on the doors inside. Yeah, we have no time. And I spent 3 weeks sleeping on the floor as soon after I moved in with boxes everywhere because I decided because I wanted to impress them to, instead of doing one chapter of The Lonely Planet to Malaysia, Singapore, and Brunei, to do 4, meaning Penang, Kedah, and Perlis, Pahang, and Johor. So meaning if 55% of the peninsula, consider that you have to go to every place. And I have to write 30,000 words in 6 weeks. So that was my starting to my going into a house, you know. So I mean, yeah, sometimes life throws these things at you, but to be honest, I promised myself that I would have stopped, but I just can't stop.
Which is why I'm curious, like amidst your and you told me like you're off this period, you're even feeling a little bit like lost, almost like disoriented, right? So I'm curious, how do you
Was
stay?
that if I had someone like you who can plan everything about my travels, I would do it every day. Like when they call me and say, okay, come to Nepal for 15 days, what do I have to do? Nothing. We do everything for you. You just have to write. I say, yes. And I did it. I did it also this year. But when I have to do guidebook work or when I have to prepare a story somewhere that I don't know and I have to really organize everything, I would appreciate to have a little bit more of time. That's the only thing that this year has lack. But yeah, I mean, this is necessary to because when you do research in a place like China, you can't go there, turn up at the train station and buy a train ticket because there's no train ticket because there's a billion people going everywhere. So you have to consider these things also as well, you know.
Yeah.
Planning is very important.
So for you, I guess home is in the journey, right? Or would you say that, how I'm just curious, how do you stay like grounded or, in the endless like comings and goings, like how do you like, you know, or is that not important to you to feel like you belong
I
somewhere?
do it or why I do it.
No, how do you do it? Like, how do
I
you?
do it. I just wake up in the morning. I mean, I am born with this problem. You probably cannot see it, but there's a demon on my back, and he has very sharp claws, and he push me into my meat every moment of the day, and he is biting my head now, and I can't I can't make it stop. So I just have to go. I mean, he tells me to go. He tells me to do things. He told me to marry that woman even. I'm here. Look at that.
You
He
sound like
told me to do something that I'll tell you later. You cannot believe it.
you
And I
sound
said
like
yes. I mean, it's just opportunities. It's just and to be honest with you, I'm lucky because I'm also financially doing okay by doing this. So that's the which at the beginning when I told my parents, my friends, my father, I mean, he was lucky that I lived on the other side of the world because otherwise he would come and slap me every day. Pam, what are you doing? Go back in the office. Pam, like that. No? I mean, it's not easy, you know. It's you wake up in the morning and you know that you must go because if I sit too long, I want to jump out of the window. Really. I mean,
So
it's
so
this
it's in
is me. I mean, I can't really change that. You know?
so it's in the going, the constant going that you belong. Dipika, did you want?
Yeah, no, I think what Marco is describing is really writing being a compulsion, which I think is true of like even novelists or anyone else who's writing. It has to be some sort of a compulsion because otherwise, really, I mean, why would you do this day after day, creating things out of.
Does it hurt for you? Because it really hurts for me while I'm doing it. You know, the act of writing. The editing is not as painful, but when I write, and when you know that you have to write because you promise this piece to that person and the other person and the other person, and you have a list, it's like a job, you know,
Yeah.
and you have to do it, you know, and yeah,
Let's talk about nostalgia.
Okay.
nostalgia for a life
Nostalgia.
without having a writing. Farming lands in Italy, growing grapes or whatever. I don't know.
We'll get there. It's not just about remembering moments, right? And it's that feeling, it's that complex feeling of warmth and yearning and even melancholy. And as writers, as storytellers, you constantly. I'm sure it's a feeling that you bask in quite a lot, like nostalgia. And I would like the both of you to reflect on the role of nostalgia and the way you remember and write about your travels. Do you see it as a lens that enhances your storytelling, or does it sometimes cloud your perspective?
Again, going back to, I think, just creative writing 101, it doesn't really matter what you're writing about. I feel very strongly that if there is something that you have a memory about from childhood or from a trip that you've taken, and it's very strong in you, it probably has some sort of universal appeal. It's the stories that we try to make up without really feeling them that don't sound so true. So I think nostalgia for like an event that you've experienced or something that you've lived through is a very strong propeller for good writing. Absolutely. It's got a huge role.
I'm very nostalgic for a better world that is no more, if I have to be honest. So when I reflect on the things that I have written or that I write, I always try to give hints to the readers to things that they can go and go more deep, in research by themselves. I always try to give a background, even in a short article, 1,200 words, where I'm describing whatever achievement of this person, because I also do a lot of journalism related to travel, which is not necessarily just describing tourism trends, but also describing people who are communities or new routes, because what I like to do is trying to get off the beaten path. I mean, I don't really like to go to the established tourism spots. I mean, I don't like Bali, example, at all. Yeah, tell me that West Bali is different. I still don't like Bali. I'm sorry. I can go to Sumatra, Flores, everywhere else. Bali cannot do. Anyways, everyone has his own thing, but nostalgia for a world that is more sensitive in terms of environment, and tonight, I have this afternoon, I even wore this shirt, and necessarily because this is a nostalgia for a time when I was playing music and people were more fun. People can have more fun. We can joke about things that now it's not easy to touch. And I'm not just saying um, racist jokes or anything else. I'm saying the way to be more free. I think today the world is a very non very happy place. And besides Trump, that we are saying political situation in Europe, we have a rising right wing supportive governments everywhere. In Israel with an H in front of it. And I'm sorry if you support them. I beg you to leave this room now, or I'm going to throw this microphone in your face. And we can't keep pretending that things are going well. And traveling shows you that we are going in a spiral of like going into the toilet, when you flush the toilet, we need to do something. And travel writing, for me, good travel writing today, it's not the one that glorifies all of this greenwashing and eco-sustainable resorts that with their sustainable practices dump even more trash into the oceans, and the turtle with the straw that I saw a meme. See how we are stupid. There's a meme of
Filled with the
the
straw.
turtle with the straw that goes down and do cocaine at the bottom of the sea. So this is humanity this day. This is the world. I mean, I feel a nostalgia for something better that we are as travel writers obliged, because this is not fiction. I wish it was fiction, but it's not. So we need to describe things as they are and try to point the way towards better solutions, because to me, this is a responsibility. A Lonely Planet guidebook, and I'm lucky because I'm privileged that I can recommend to a wide amount of people. I touch on these topics as well. I mean, because we have to.
How do you feel about this?
I think it's a factor of our growing old that we think that the world is going to the dogs and there was a better time. because no, I mean, for me, it's definitely that, because I do think that, in every age we've had our challenges. And honestly, when I was growing up, I mean, India did not have recycling as like these pretty little symbols. But honestly, most people would recycle their newspaper, their clothes. There was a guy who'd come to the house and take old clothes and give you a stainless steel stuff. And America was all clearly like just creating the most pollution at that time. And now things have reversed. And, India is like New Delhi right now is the most polluted city in the world. So I think that things have always been bad. And as human beings, we really have to find a solution. Travel writing, unfortunately, again, they do go into eco sustainability kind of things, which are sometimes just eyewash. It doesn't do very much change. I completely agree with you. But I think that there is starting to be some sort of a recognition that we are a planet in crisis. And that in itself, I think, is a good place to start, instead of thinking that we have no problem at all. Yeah.
When it was before the pandemic, things were reaching a level that was described as too much over tourism and stuff. Then we have the pandemic. It particularly affect me. I don't know if you don't know my story. Very briefly, I lost both my parents to COVID in the span of 3 days while I was researching a guidebook in Peru, and I got stuck in a mountain for a month, and I saw the graves 21 months later. Thanks, I can see your eyes are falling down, but this happened to me on assignment, okay? So don't tell me about the world, because I hope that the world will change, especially tourism, because we have talked about problems, trying to find solutions. So as soon as things got back in place, the first things that Lonely Planet asked me to write on the website was 13 best things to do in Hanoi, this type of things. Of course, you need the money, you do it. And you can do it also in a nice way. You can try to say things that are positive, help people to make informed choices. But I don't think that the travel industry has changed much since before COVID, and many people seem to have forgotten that that thing happened to us. So nostalgia we were talking about. I am nostalgic, as I said, for more honesty, for more transparency about the places that we go, because not to throw trash at Bali again, but when I read about Bali, and I mean, I don't know how people can still write good things about Canggu and Sanur and those places. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's over tourism. So, what do we want for our travels? We want to go on a beach with other, even a multicultural population, but do we want to have the same discussions about the same globalized practices? So we want to try to find something that is more unique, like travel to challenge yourself, travel to learn something new, travel to understand different cultures, and to again lower your ego to embrace the world, which is why I started to travel and write in the first place. Yeah.
Has that changed?
Yeah.
Like for you?
So that puzzles me, the way that we are want to frame this travel writing and whatever. And I just want to say that I am aware of this, and I want you to know that it's a problem in the industry as well, because many companies who like Intrepid or whatever else, who say that they pay for greenwashing and everything else, in the end, they don't really do what they say that they do. I mean, so it's the same.
Yeah.
All right. I think that concludes today's session. We've had two notices on the time. So thank you, Dipika and Marco, for taking us on this walk with us. Thank you everyone for being here, listening in, and being with us as well. And thank you to the Italian Embassy for sponsoring this panel. Thank you everyone, and a round of applause for our writers here.
Thank you for being here.